Hello, ninjas and ninjets, and welcome to another episode of the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. This show is all about helping you to generate more leads and sales through your website. I'm the host, Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm a best-selling digital marketing author and head ninja at Exposure Ninja, which is a marketing agency based in the UK. In this episode, I wanted to bring on someone to talk about email marketing, and I thought who better to talk about email marketing than the Chief Marketing Officer of one of the world's largest and most popular email marketing platforms. So I'm joined today by Eric Harbison. Now, Eric is Chief Marketing Officer at AWeber, which is an email marketing platform. It's one that I've used personally in my very, very first business, and lots of our clients at Exposure Ninja use as well. So I wanted to ask Eric what AWeber themselves do with their own email marketing, right? Because what could be better than what an actual email marketing company does with its own email marketing? So we dive into what AWeber does, but we also look at some common mistakes that people are making with their email marketing. We look at some best practice principles, and Eric takes us through some of the examples which he considers to be the best examples of email marketing out there in the wild. So we look at what makes them so successful so that listeners can copy those things for themselves. So we talk about things like list segmentation. We talk about how to condition people to look forward to getting your emails. And we also talk about things like how frequently we should be sending, what sorts of stuff we should be sending, and how long the emails that we should be sending are. So I hope you get a lot of value from this. Remember, if you want the show notes, there's also some links to some additional resources which Eric has sent over. So you can go to exposureninja.com/podcast. And while you're there, don't forget to check out the free website and marketing review as well. Now, this marketing review is carried out by one of the team here at Exposure Ninja, and we'll spend anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes having a look at your digital marketing, what your competitors are doing, and based on your goals, we'll map you out a marketing plan that you can follow to increase the leads and sales that you're generating. It's completely free of charge. There's absolutely no catch at all. If you're interested in that, then head over to exposureninja.com to grab yours. Anyway, without further ado, enjoy the show with Eric. Eric, welcome to the show.
Hey, Tim, great to be here.
For those who don't know AWeber, perhaps you could give us a bit of a background about what the company does and the scale that you operate at.
Sure, a great question. So AWeber is an email marketing platform designed to support small to medium-sized businesses, including entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, startups. And we're an email marketing platform that lets these businesses create and manage a database of names, but more importantly, create engaging, segmented emails to send to that audience to build a relationship. And our company's actually been around almost 20 years. And in that time, we've serviced probably over 1 million different businesses, but currently we have about over 100,000 customers on our platform that run the range of all those business types that I mentioned earlier.
Awesome. So you guys have a lot of data about email marketing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember, in fact, AWeber is one of the companies that we recommend to clients who want to get started with email marketing and they want a simple solution, because I think one of the great things about AWeber, and I hope you don't mind me saying also MailChimp as well, is that it's really easy to get started, isn't it? It's just nice and simple, straightforward. Anyone can do it. You don't need any coding knowledge or anything like that.
Yeah, it's great. A great point. I mean, a lot of it is no design skills, no coding skills, no copywriting skills necessary. I mean, our platform is designed to make it really, take out the anxiety of getting started.
Obviously, with your background and the number of emails which AWeber must have sent out, I mean, you must be in charge of a significant percentage of the world's emails. Obviously, you have some really useful insight into what's working out there and probably also what's not. For many people, email marketing kind of starts and ends at the little sign up for our newsletter box at the bottom of the blog, which has like 2 conversions every 6 months and is just kind of dead. So perhaps we could start by giving a bit of an overview of what are some of the most effective ways that you see companies using email marketing today, whether that's automation or whether it's like piping people through the sales funnel. Like very broadly, what are some of the ways that you see people using email marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you're right in that, a lot of sites have the ability to just, like you said, sign up for the newsletter. And I think that may have been powerful or popular in the last call it 5-10 years, I think companies are getting smarter, and I think customers are getting smarter, or prospects are getting smarter, in that they expect more value from you as the business. So those that are doing it well are actually using the ability to look to provide value for the request of a name or an email address. And in most cases, people overthink how much information should I ask for on that newsletter. And quite frankly, all you really need is, the best email address, work email address, whatever it is, in order to provide the piece of value that you're giving them. Businesses should not just be saying, get my newsletter. Businesses should be saying, sign up today and get the top 10 ways to succeed at X. And the X could be whatever industry you're in. So successful businesses are using email to build the value relationship from day one with non-customers. Because if a non-customer sees you as the smartest and the thought leader in their space, then they're more likely going to be interested in learning more about your product or service. As you begin to use a nurture series or send more relevant emails over the course of, whatever that may be, 7 to 14 days. Other successful companies, I'd say, are embracing, kind of what I was saying before. They're embracing email as the hub of their customer relationship strategy. And part of that involves making sure that anywhere that your business is, whether that's in a digital format or a offline format, you're thinking of ways to provide value and using your email database as a way to collect and drive, prospects or customers into your database. And then from there, it's how well are you looking at that database and segmenting the information in there so that you're sending customer information to customers, you're sending nurture information to prospects, and really leveraging the power of the fact that you set expectations so that they open up the email when it enters their inbox.
So there's a really important distinction there, isn't it? Because you said about providing value, and we always talk about this with whether it's social media. You don't just want to pump out promotional stuff on social media because you're not going to get anybody following or taking any notice. And it feels like the exact same thing is true with email, isn't it? This is not just a broadcast medium where we're just pumping out our promotional stuff and we're just trying to sell. The goal here is really to build a relationship. And as generic as that sounds, actually, that's absolutely fundamental.
Yes. And businesses should be thinking about every email that I send. Am I setting myself up so that the recipient is going to want to see the next email? Because how many times have you received that email where the first 3 that you received from a business were great because they talked about thanks for purchasing or let me see a review or something like that. But then they send that 4th or 5th email that so just misses the point. And they may have used your name in the subject line, but the content after that is just not compelling. And there's no real reason. They're not asking for more information to be more valuable to you. So I think businesses have to embrace every email should link to the next email, meaning there should be so much value, or you should be collecting information in that email so that the next email you send, and then, therefore should be building off of some intelligence that you're capturing or that you're tracking from the email that you're sending.
So maybe we could flesh this out with some examples then. Who do you think is doing a really good job of email marketing, let's say in e-commerce at the moment?
Yeah, e-commerce, I think about what I love to see is, I come from a direct response background. So it's been a lot about e-commerce brands I've been working with. And so many times retailers tend to focus on the sale and they don't focus so much on the brand. So I love brands that make the emotional connection with the purchase connection, meaning they're so relevant in tying the two together that I'm thinking of them top of mind whenever I have a need. And 2 brands that come to mind for me are Dollar Shave Club. Obviously, there's a great story behind their growth and how they got to where they are. And Warby Parker, which is the eyeglass manufacturer, to where, I'm a repeat customer of theirs because of recognizing how they tie their brand, illicit emotions, very seasonal, but also knowing what styles I've purchased before, so they know what to kind of lead me into as it relates to when it's time for my next purchase. They're not inundating me with emails just because they know that my purchase cycle usually is 2.5 years, and that's when they're sending me information to know that it's time for me to consider another seasonal purchase. So when you start to see that blend between, they really pick up on the brand aspect, but also they're not always constantly asking you to purchase or upselling you, but they're being as relevant as possible. I think Dollar Shave Club will send an email update to just let me know, hey, we're about to ship this to you. Would you like to change anything in your order? And 8 times out of 10, I'll say, no, I'm good. And just, no action necessary. However, on those times where I've expected to see that email in my inbox, there have been times where I go in there and say, yes, I'd like to add something to my cart. So I think just that being consistent and showing that they're thinking of me and they're really looking to make sure that I have a valuable experience. Those are 2 examples that jump out.
So that's a great example of Dollar Shave Club, because obviously they're getting upsells from that, but they're also going to be reducing their return rate, right? Because this is about getting the order right.
Getting the order right, exactly, but also conditioning me to look for their email in my inbox so that of the flood of 250 emails we all get every day, I may not open or click inside that email, but I know when I see it, it stands out for me because it is that kind of every month I'm seeing the same reminder showing up. So yes, it's making sure that they're getting the order right, but also building that consistency and conditioning me to always look for that email inside of my flooded inbox.
Really interesting point about conditioning. I want to ask you a bit more about that later on. For Warby Parker, who the purchase cycle you mentioned is about 2.5 years, what can they do other than contact you every 2.4 years and say, hey, it's almost time to get some new glasses? How are they keeping you engaged, and what are they doing to trigger that consistency?
I think they know my location, and my location is outside of Philadelphia, and I believe that's where they were established. So they know my location, but they also know for events or things that they're doing that are within location or close to me. They're telling me about those things as well. So they show that they're supporting an initiative by supporting a charity of some kind in a local area as more of just an announcement. And hey, we're having an event. Nice if you can stop by. So when I see that sort of extension beyond just being a retailer and being kind of more of a charitable organization trying to help out, that helps to kind of build on that brand component that I talked about earlier, where it's connecting emotion to their brand name and kind of what they're standing for. So those are some of the ways to stay warm, if you will, over a 2.5-year cycle. But the other thing that generates that kind of top of mind is, that cycle is also tied to the prescription expiration date as well. So I'm only as good as my most recent prescription. So I think that too helps to still keep them relevant in 2-year cycles.
Got it. The other thing that you mentioned there is segmentation and making sure that what they're sending you is relevant. I guess one of the maybe mistakes or the easy things that it would be one of the easy things to do when you're setting up email marketing for the first time is just have one email list, and everyone who signs up for anything, anyone who buys anything goes into this one list, and then you send out an email to everyone. So why is that not ideal, and what would be the alternative approach there?
Alternative to a one list presence? Yep. It's really understanding your audience. So, everyone talks about segmentation, and, I've seen cases of over segmenting or maybe not taking the time to think through what the best segmentation could be. So I think of it as, a list per whatever group or segment of your audience is going to generate the most value to whatever your objectives are. Some brands, it could be highest, most recent purchasers or those that purchase the highest amount. Some kind of element of revenue or value, and having those sit in a separate list so you can be more segmented, because these are typically purchasers that will look at your next upsell. And if you're a retailer that has a lot of SKUs or a lot of opportunities for upsell, it could be relevant to segment a separate list in that way. If you're a service provider, you have a physical location. So geo-targeting could make more sense, where there's the list of those within a 20-mile radius, because they're more likely going to be able to provide foot traffic and tell others within their radius. So that messaging is going to be different than somebody who may be less inclined to visit that location or see you at a particular event. So it really just comes down to making sure that you are approaching segmentation with a mindset and a plan versus just, people think it's, male, female, or some of these other kind of binary segmentation classifications. And while they are true, they may not be the best thing for you to kind of rally entire campaigns around.
Got it. What's the potential value of getting this stuff right? Let's say we've got a listener. I was just talking to a client who we're building a website for. They've got a previous history of customers, and they've never used email marketing. I'm trying to explain to him, the value of getting this thing done for our business. Personally, it completely transformed the effectiveness of our sales team and multiplied what each person was able to do. But for the typical business who's not doing any email marketing, what's the potential value of getting this stuff right? Like, what sort of uptick should they expect?
Yeah, and that's a great point. And in that case, that's a kind of a best case scenario, because here you have a business that's probably thinking email isn't going to be a business driver. And the reality is it can be absolutely a significant business driver for them, just by getting involved with a little bit of thought and the right amount of steps in place. But my background is in direct response and ROI and e-commerce, and email as a channel that is part of your integrated marketing stack can be a channel that generates anywhere from maybe 20% on the low end to 65% on the high end of your monthly revenues. So if you're not thinking about email as being a revenue driver for you, it's a great opportunity, and B, the cost to set it up or the cost to maintain is not necessarily a huge investment based on the returns that you're getting. Now, if your average order value is $15 or $150, obviously that you can do the calculations. But if you're selling a product or you have a service that requires any sort of lead capture, email can be one of the most effective channels as part of your integrated marketing campaigns or integrated marketing plan. And I say that because email doesn't become 25% on its own or 50% of revenue on its own. It's got to work into your integrated solution, because when you're working email and coordinating with your social media presence and think of all the touch points your brand has with your customer or potential customer, together is where you're going to recognize that value.
So how do people do that then? Because the tendency might be to set up an email stream or a series of email streams which are just kind of running, and then at the same time do social media stuff. And they're doing their social media stuff over here. They've got their email stuff over here. And they're not really talking. They're not really working together. So how can we think about this a bit more holistic?
Yeah, that's a great point, because we often find that a customer may be excited that they have 40,000 followers in Facebook, and they're doing a lot of promotion. They're getting a lot of engagement from their audience, but they're not including a link in their bio or a link in a pin post that references, hey, if you sign up here, you'll get this value. So social is a great driver of lead capture. And even imagine it's, because then the question is like, well, I'm on prospects. These are my customers that are hanging out on social. Well, great. Well, then on your form, just ask people to identify as customer, non-customer, or take other measures to further segment who's coming to sign up. But you'd be surprised how many of your followers in social are not aware that you have an email list where they can gain value or gain some information or educational information from you that only helps to further the relationship if you're a customer, but gives you an opportunity to impress and become a thought leader for those non-customers.
Perhaps it might help to also look at AWeber's own email marketing, because I was on your blog today and I think it was an exit pop up, and I noticed at the bottom of your blog post there was a CTA to get the growth blueprint email course. You're creating that content on social. You're creating the content on the blog. You're sharing it out on social. Really, the goal of all of that is just to get the email subscriber, isn't it?
It is in exchange for giving someone educational content. And through series after collecting that information, we'll be able to determine, is somebody a customer or a non-customer. But at the end of the day, while you see all that information, we've put a steady focus behind what is the content that our customers or our potential customers want and they're not getting, or they need maybe a more specific hand-holding approach, step-by-step, whether it's video or PDF. And that's what's driven a lot of the content you see created on our blog. But you're right, the means of which we're capturing that, so a slide-in, exit pop-up, we've tested those to make sure that the sequencing or when it's showing is giving us the best chance to appeal to somebody who may be visiting, just taking a look around, but it's the value that we're providing in those, what you get for when you give your name and email, that we've focused on by getting feedback from our customer bases.
And before the call, we were talking about feedback and the feedback process that you have with your own email.
Absolutely. And it's kind of something we're a little bit addicted to. And that's, first, in the last couple of years, we just learned to embrace, it's one of our core values is inviting feedback. So we decided to take that into our content and our connections with our customers. And in our customer emails, so when we send segmented emails to various customer segments, in our footer, we look to invite feedback through what we call a sentiment widget. And all that is a, very two icons. It's a smiley face and a frowny face. And the only question we ask is, how did this email make you feel? So we're tapping into an emotional connection. Obviously, new release announcements or product upgrades may elicit a, happy response. But again, you don't know unless you ask. So it's been a great way to collect feedback from our customers that says, great job, keep up the good work, would love to see more of this. Or for those that are giving, it did make them happy, it gives them a platform where it's okay for them to express themselves by saying, this did make me happy because, whatever their case may be, whether it's something specific for their account. But what it does do is it also lets us connect with those individuals and help them. And if it's something specific to their account, someone from our customer support team will get on the phone with them. If it's something specific to our product, all that information is collected and shared with our product team so that as they're developing and prioritizing things in the queue, they have that feedback kind of, at the ready. And we're not guessing in terms of what it is that our customers want to see or need as part of growing their business. So it's interesting because this all came from, Net Promoter Score is something a lot of businesses need to do. And this was kind of a very slim way of doing that. Now, granted, it's not the same thing in terms of collecting an actual number, but we wanted to take more of an emotional approach and connect with our customers on, how does the email make you feel? And then opening the door for them to give us some feedback.
That's really interesting because it feels to me like a lot of the selling point for email marketing for businesses is that it's just automated and, it's just this thing that kind of blasts out. Thinking back to our own experience, some of the most effective emails that we've sent out or that we have in our pipelines are things like, hey, just checking in to see how it's going. Something that's really short and really personal and designed to elicit a personal response. Just like you said, it allows you to kind of contact people one-on-one. So it's not just this one-way stream. Actually, you're using an automated thing or you're using a big broadcast thing to get individual responses, right?
Exactly. And I think the majority of marketers are still using email in the way you just said, which is one email to satisfy everybody. And, again, the good news is there's opportunity to be a little bit more prescriptive and more personal in ways that don't take a lot of effort. Because you're right. If anyone's listening, they have a database. When's the last time you sent that one email that just said, how are we doing? Reply with feedback. And that's 3 lines, probably takes you less than 10 minutes to create. But boy, oh boy, even if you have 50 subscribers, who doesn't want to get feedback from, 5 to 10 people? Because when you act on that, because that's, don't ask unless you're going to act on it. If you act on that feedback, you have a great chance to set up not just a happy customer or a few customers, but they will be more inclined to speak highly of you in whatever channel it is that they tend to communicate in or they tend to engage with other customers or prospects like them.
I want to kind of ask you about some of the other learnings that you've had from this feedback widget, because you must have figured out some stuff as a result of the happy or sad faces, which was maybe surprising to you.
Yeah, and one of them was, when we thought we had an email that was going out to announce whether it was one of the latest courses that we released, the Blueprint course you referenced. When we notified customers of that Blueprint course, we were expecting to see a lot of good, kind of more positive engagement than negative engagement. And it wasn't that we saw more negative than positive, but it's what we were getting when people decided to click either the happy or the negative, which was, it was less feedback about the course itself, but more about ideas on other pieces of content we could be creating. So for us, that's awesome because it tells us when we start planning for the next piece of content we want to create, we're not guessing. We're getting direct feedback from our customers where, we know that, growing a list is very important. We know that what to write in those emails is very important, which are two evergreen pieces of content we have. But what we started to hear back are some other ideas around monetization and creative and just other pieces of what it means to have an email campaign that we all knew were important. But here we are getting some nods and some indicators that say, okay, now we know what to focus on next. So it's really helped us be more efficient in our planning process.
That's awesome. Was there anything that you thought, oh, this is really, really good, people love it, that actually people weren't so keen on?
When we release a new feature update, typically, obviously it's good for customers to get something new in their hands. So we do expect a lot of positive response from that. And the only time something's going to be negative in that case is when it's the feature that they may already know doesn't exist or not need, and they need something else. So in the same way, all it's doing is really just kind of it's prompting people to think about their needs and are your needs being met? And in the case where we send out feature release updates, it may elicit somebody to say like, no, that's great that you're releasing this, but I really need this. And again, it just goes back to that. Unless you're asking your customers, you don't know what the most impactful need or want could be that you could address. So we always think, again, like any product marketers, you're thinking, get the release in the hands of the customers, let them start using it, let them start getting value from something we heard from them before. But it's always the case of once you satisfy that need, there's always another need that needs to be thought of. And this sentiment widget is just helping us, kind of get to that point in a very direct way.
Awesome. So even when they're unhappy, they're still giving you useful feedback, aren't they?
Yeah, and it's the thing is like it's hard to satisfy everybody, but if you establish a way to kind of maintain consistent feedback, I just don't understand how other businesses aren't doing this, because if you're not, opening that line of communication, and yes, you may be sending a quarterly update or quarterly email, but man, oh man, if you're in a very, kind of dynamic space, you never know, you may want to, establish something a little bit more frequent and a little bit more regular so that you're not going to miss out on something that may be, propping up as an opportunity or a threat. Because got to be prepared to be nimble and move quick.
That's a really nice segue. I've got some specific questions about email marketing. These tend to be the things that we get asked. And the first one was frequency. So I know that there's no kind of golden rule of you should email people this many times per week or month. It obviously depends on the market, but how should people think about frequency?
Great question. And for me, I'll try and think about it from a standpoint of, business owners. If you're new, let's go back to, just take it from this way. If you're new into email marketing, or you have a database like the example you gave earlier, and you're just starting into email, there's a conditioning that's required, and there's a cadence that probably needs to be more frequent initially to start letting people know that you're sending value. That can taper off over time. And there's no set time there, but just know that if you're just starting a relationship with somebody, you want to contact them more frequently as you start to build your trust. So if you're just getting started with email, when they're signing up to get that piece of content from you, you're probably sending a thank you for joining. You're probably sending an email every other day, providing more information about you, with options for them to connect to click to connect with you over the course of maybe 2 weeks. And then after those 2 weeks, you're probably sending twice a month, at least to maintain, again, not just sending for the sake of sending, but by then you've been able to segment those that are signing up so you can start to condition those separate segments with content on a twice per month basis. Now, I won't say that's for everybody. That's maybe a way to start thinking about it if you're starting from scratch. But if you're a business that has been sending, and you have a cadence, step one is to benchmark, like where do you feel your level of trust is with your database? And that could start with a very specific question that says, are you receiving this email, not frequent, not enough, just enough, or too much? And then based on the links that they're clicking, you can start segmenting and putting them in, tagging them into separate segments so that those that want to get it more frequently can. And those that only want the monthly update, just get the monthly update. So you You can use the power of those automations and tagging and segmenting by links that are clicked to provide more relevant information, because that then answers the question emphatically of, what's the right time to send? And the answer is whatever our customers tell us. And if you go with that mindset, well, then it forces you to make sure you ask that question at the right time, so that you're able to set up that frequency the right way.
And I guess if you know you're going to be asking that question, you're also going to be really careful about what you're sending as well. Because if you're just sending some self-promotional crap, then the answer is always going to come back, I'm getting this email too often.
Exactly.
How about email length? Because we've seen really short emails work well, but you also see people running some really, really long emails. Do you have any thoughts on what sort of optimal length would be?
The starting point on those, and when you find yourself sitting in front of that document to type out, content for the next email, I like to say, think of context first before thinking about the content, because there have been times where we've tested a very specific, let's think about feature releases. So when there's been a new release, we tested a very succinct 2-paragraph, here's what it is, here's what it does, and then click here to learn more. And that operates. Obviously, we're looking for higher click-through rates because there's not a lot to consume. Compared to a longer email that is more exploratory and more explanatory in the email, because again, the context for that one is somebody that's more of a beginner that probably needs to digest and process more. So we segmented or sectioned the email out, the content, to be very kind of like step 1, step 2, step 3. Like, what does it mean? Just be very, not over wordy, but just make it more sectional so someone can skim through and see what it is that we're trying to explain. And then inside of each of those sections, we had a link out to the landing page supporting the release. So obviously it's, you look for higher click-through rates, open and click rates from the shorter, more succinct email, because we're getting right to the point. And we were conditioned to look for lower click rates from the longer email, because people may not get through it all. It may not be too much, but those that do take the time to read it, we may find them to be more successful on the back end when it comes to setting up an account and taking their time and becoming more successful in the first 30 days. So I like to think of context before writing the content, because it'll A, open your eyes to a testing opportunity, or B, it'll be very clear to say, oh, geez, if this is we messed up and we sent the wrong email, well, then we got to make sure it's just straight and to the point. And let's not mince words and just make it very factual and very to the point, and should take 3 sentences.
Got it. That's great advice, context before content. What about formatting and images? And we've noticed that, for example, when we use too many images in an email, it goes straight through to the promotions tab, the dreaded promotions tab in Gmail. So by default, tend to just use plain text. But I know a lot of clients, when they start working with email, their desire is for something that looks, really professional, really nicely designed, big logo at the top here. How do you think about that?
I mean, when images are okay to use, it's just following best practices, making sure that you have the alt tags and the kind of the alt text behind those images so that can be read, assuming the images don't load. But the same concept may apply where if it's e-commerce and it's got to be product centric and there's got to be a product library shown, and then client wants to make it look like a mini website inside of the email. If there's going to be a lot of that, there's probably value in conditioning those you're sending to whitelist the sender, and think about the effort put behind whether it's after someone signs up to join the list, or every now and then send a reminder email that if you want to keep on getting these offers, drag this email into the primary tab. Now that's not going to be the be all end all fix, but it's a signal that tells Gmail, hey, I want to see this email in my primary tab more often than not. And if you're conditioning folks to do that, you can still use the images, knowing that your recipients are more inclined to have asked and requested that this email from you gets sent to their primary tab.
Got it. So it comes back to this conditioning thing. Yes. We're actually specifically there trying to get an action. I guess also when you said about asking people a question, getting them to email you and give you feedback, I guess that is also going to be treated as a signal by Gmail that this is something that people want to read, right? So that's got to help with your deliverability.
It is a signal that they look at as positive, which in the case of our sentiment widget is just somebody clicking the email. But if you're prompting to say, reply to this email, and the fact that your subscriber would actually click the reply to button inside of their email provider or email client, yeah, that's another positive signal as well. So it's signals like replying to that email, which, again, case by case may have better success than others. Clicking inside the email, good signal. Dragging and moving the email from folder A to folder B, folder B being the primary tab, or out of spam or out of promotions. That's another good signal. So, when you think about conditioning, it's conditioning two elements. It's conditioning not just your subscriber, but also conditioning Gmail to see what you prefer, and let them see that you're taking these positive signals to ensure that you're seeing these emails moving forward.
Have you noticed a big drop-off, or what are you noticing kind of industry-wide about deliverability thanks to things like the promotions tab?
Yeah, I mean, we've done we've got our own deliverability team here at AWeber. So, we're constantly talking to the ISPs, just kind of trying to stay connected with what it is that they're looking for. And obviously, I liken it, it's a lot like SEO, where there's this kind of black box of what works and what doesn't work, but no one knows. There may be 200 elements and signals that Gmail and Yahoo and Outlook look for, but no one has that list anywhere. All we know is what's the best practice and what we should be doing, knowing that tomorrow could change and they may be looking for something different. So for us, it's just a matter of staying connected. And I think industry-wide, there's been some cases with Yahoo and with Gmail where there's been open rates that have been declining, and just kind of, it isn't tied to any one specific ESP. It's just industry-wide, everyone's reporting this just constant, let's say this, drop off a cliff in deliverability to a specific client. And it's one of those things where it's hard for the population to understand that there is this control that exists with the internet service providers, the Gmails, the Yahoos, that can impact industry-wide what people are doing and what their success rate is in getting emails sent to the inbox. However, it isn't something that's so frequent that it causes a big, concern and uproar. I mean, look at SEO and Google. When they do their releases, people are aware of it. They prepare for it. They, read articles and blogs coming from, various sources, and they make their best effort to make changes. And in our world, it's very similar in that when something happens, we try to do our best to research, contact them directly because we have those direct relationships, and understand what it is that we can be doing differently as an email service provider and what we can be educating our customers on.
I guess it's one of those, like you say, like SEO, where anytime there's a change, there's always going to be winners and losers. So there's two ways of looking at deliverability. You could either say, oh no, my emails are getting into the promotions tab, or you could say, oh no, all of my competitors' emails are going into the promotions tab. All I need to do is figure out how to get out of the promotions tab, and then I have clear air, and I'm getting a lot more eyeballs than I would have done otherwise. So I guess there's always two ways of looking at these things, aren't there? It's just a tool that's just another step in the process.
And that's a great way to look at it, because when we think of deliverability, is that approach, which is great. Thinking about how do I address what I'm seeing to be what can be an issue, but how do you turn it into an opportunity? But we break down deliverability into four main segments. There's four main things that impact your success in getting your emails into inboxes, and a lot of people think it's just it's all Gmail's fault. And it isn't all Gmail's fault, although they do have a pretty big part in the ecosystem. So it's four pieces. The first piece is the marketer. It's what's the business doing to set the expectations? And obviously, like we talked about, it's asking to be whitelisted, segmenting names so it's only relevant information getting sent to someone who's expecting it. That's the first piece. The second piece is your email service provider. Who you're working with, do they have direct relationships with the ISPs or the internet service providers? Do they have a strong reputation? All these things can be asked before you decide to pick somebody. So the ESP has a role that can be played. Then the third is the ISP, so the internet service provider, Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, etc. But there's not much you can influence there. Just know that they are what they are, and just make sure that whoever you're working with can get all the signals, understand what the best signals are for them to get your emails sent to the inbox. And then the fourth piece of this is your subscriber. How are they acting? How are you conditioning them so that no matter what you're sending, they're looking for it? are you connecting your expectations to the sequence that you're sending so that, like the examples we talked about, they're expecting to see your email the time that based on what you set when they signed up or as you start to send more information. So subscribers have a pretty big role in it that you can influence. But again, if someone's not getting what they want from your brand, they'll unsubscribe, and that's okay. And if someone's unsubscribing, you'd rather have it unsubscribed than a spam complaint. Is kind of another mantra to live by, is because spam complaints can impact you, moving forward. Unsubscribes can only help you if they remove and they're not active and they're not getting value. That's okay. Then focus on those that are there for the expectations that you set.
Very well said. This has been really, really interesting, Eric. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find out more about you? And if they're interested in checking out AWeber, where can they do that?
Yeah, so best place to connect with me is on Twitter. And that's my hashtag is @EricHarbison, and that's Eric with a K. And then to learn more about AWeber, just go to aweber.com. Or you can send me an email, and that's erich@aweber.com. And I'd be happy to help getting the information about AWeber to you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Eric, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thanks, Dib.